Our guest on this episode of the podcast is an accomplished marine biologist, underwater explorer, photographer, aquarist, and author. He has been a fisheries biologist with Massachusetts Marine Fisheries since 1987 and currently heads up the Massachusetts Shark Research Program, MSRP. He holds a master's degree from the University of Rhode Island and a PhD from Boston University. He is a perfect example of someone having a dream and persisting to make it a reality. As a young boy, after the release of the movie Jaws in 1975, he aspired to become the well-known fictitious marine biologist and shark scientist Matt Hooper, and that is exactly what happened. For more than 35 years, our guest has been one of the most renowned marine biologists and shark scientists in the world. He has been actively involved in the study of life history, ecology, physiology of sharks. His research has spanned multiple fish habitats around the globe, from the frigid waters of the Arctic Circle to coral reefs in the tropical Central Pacific. In recent years, our guest has become the face of all things shark-related on Cape Cod. Our guest and his associate, John Chisholm, were the first to successfully tag and track great white sharks in the Northwest Atlantic Ocean using high-tech tags through the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. The organization now has the ability to track local and long-range movements, study behavior and biology, and estimate population size of great whites in the area. Since our guest began tagging white sharks in Cape Cod and Massachusetts, he and his crew have tagged over 280 animals. We've been fortunate to know our guest since we were kids. We have always admired his passion and knowledge for the ocean. This conversation was truly incredible, and we hope you guys enjoyed as much as we did. Without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Doctor Gregory Skomal. Welcome to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast, where we follow 3 words of wisdom. You can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight.
Am I coming off or what? Get that down. Don't get on that rock.
You guys there?
We got you, sir.
We have you.
Let me put this thing in. How's that?
Perfect.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Doing good? It's been a long time since I've talked to you, actually. Last time I talked to you was that big male mako shark about 10 years ago.
12 years ago.
Was that up in Scituate?
It
Where
was.
that?
It was Scituate Harbor, yeah.
Yeah, that was that giant male. We dissected it right on the docks, and like Channel 4 or somebody came by.
Yeah.
Bianca De La Garza got her stiletto heel stuck in the rod holder, getting on and off the boat.
And tanked it into the boat.
What the hell happened to Bianca? Shit, she was hot.
She was.
Yeah.
Oh,
she still is.
She still is. She seems ageless at this point, I think.
Where does she still do news?
I don't think so. She does like domestic stuff now, like social media, repping different products, I believe. I know way too much about her. Yeah, I guess
that could. We could go down the.
I was gonna say, Jesus. Man, I'm just.
First things first. How was your knee? It's your knee, right?
No, I had my hip done 3 weeks ago. Yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm doing great. I'm down to a cane, and I think by the end of next week, I won't even have that.
Wow, it's amazing how quick that recovery process is.
It really is. It's amazing how quick the surgery is, and how fast they had me, home.
Yep.
It was pretty amazing. So I'm excited about getting back to normal and not struggling with arthritis like I was the last couple of years.
That's great. Was it a complete replacement, I'm assuming?
Yeah, of my right hip,
Gotcha.
my right side. So, yeah, complete replacement, and it feels pretty good.
That's great. One quick thing, not to change topics, but your mic is hitting your zipper on your.
That's not good.
There you go. Perfecto. Much better.
Awesome.
Well, now I look like a which is.
You could either do the collar approach, like fold it down, like polo collar style, or you could go turtleneck, whatever you prefer. That's much better.
Now, if it was old Greg, our father, he'd probably go straight turtleneck.
Yeah, he would rock the turtleneck the whole time.
No. I'm at that age too. I'm getting to that age where I'm going to do just turtlenecks. It happens when you get to be an old shit. That's what happens to me.
You're not that old. You're not that old.
Well, I'm getting up there, buddy. You feel old when you have a hip replacement.
Yeah.
You just do. Well, let me know if that's okay in terms of the mic. I don't want to screw things up.
You're good.
We'll see how it goes.
As far as the rules of the road, too, we're recording. We can cut out anything after the fact.
All right, great.
Swearing is
this
fine.
isn't live
This
or
is
anything.
not live. This is just casual conversation, fishermen talking, scientists, fishermen talking, having a good old time in the morning.
That sounds fine. I like that kind of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And swearing's 100% fine and very encouraged.
Yeah. It exhibits passion. It exhibits passion. So
that's pretty funny.
So the way we like to kind of start these things off is with some random questions. So we have some shark related and fishing related questions, and then we just have some funny personal questions for you too. What should we start with?
You have to start.
You have to start with that.
Yeah.
So we did a little bit of Skomal research over the last
a lot of
Skomal research over the last couple of days. Yeah.
We dug up the good stuff.
We dug up some TED Talks. We dug up some some Zoom calls that you did with some amazing diagrams, data. I mean, as you know, I'm assuming you could talk about this for weeks and weeks and weeks straight and still not be done with it. But we have a couple of highlights from some previous content that you've been a part of. So we'll try to hit on that after the rapid fire. But question number 1, what is your favorite scene in Jaws?
Oh man. Shit, there's a lot of good ones. It's amazing. No one's ever asked me that.
Nice.
It's amazing how Jaws kind of played out in my career. One of my favorite scenes was the dead shark, believe it or not, on the dock. Because that was a real tiger shark.
A what?
And a what? And they ended up doing a dissection on that shark, which is something I did a lot of in the early part of my career, and I still do dissections. But really, I think the scene that jumps out at me when I was a kid sitting in a movie theater, and that's how old I was. I am. I saw Jaws in a movie theater when it came out.
That's
and
so cool. So jealous of that, by the way.
Yeah. But I think it's when they're on the bow of the boat and that shark, swims by the boat, and you get a sense, and it actually looks real to me. That shark. There are a lot of scenes in that film where that shark looks plastic and fake.
Right.
Now, but back then there are a few scenes that I thought looked really pretty striking, like a real shark, and it steams along the side of the boat. And I think Hooper's on the bow and Quint's on the bow, and he's getting ready to shoot the shark with this really cool harpoon rifle, right? And he's waiting for Hooper to tie the knot, and Hooper's going, "Yeah, don't wait for me, right?" And come, Mr. Hooper, come on, Hooper, and then he shoots it, and it drags the barrel out. I mean, that to me is really an exciting part of the film where you really get a view of the shark, and its size,
right?
And that jumps out at me as my favorite scene, at least when I saw it in the theater.
Would you have ever thought that in 30 plus years later, that would be
50.
truly you on the end of the pulpit, on the boat,
No.
doing exactly that.
That really is an amazing shot, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought that would be me. I mean, I that movie inspired me, and I thought, well, I'd love to do what this guy Hooper does, and I think that would be really fun. Whether I thought I'd be on the bow of a pulpit, doing similar things to white sharks, no, that was beyond my imagination.
It's incredible. That's awesome. We're jealous. Big time.
Yeah, I
I
pinch
got
myself.
goosebumps.
I know.
I got to pinch myself,
That's great. Have you ever been bitten?
No, I've never been bitten. Not and bitten meaning that the shark my hand or some body part was in the mouth of a shark. No, I've never been bitten. There's been a couple instances where I've gotten close. All the wounds I've gotten from shark teeth are basically self-inflicted. I went through this stage early on in my career when we were doing a lot of shark dissections to collect shark jaws and to clean them. And I still do. I clean jaws every now and then. And the teeth are so sharp, and you really are digging away at these things that every time I clean a shark jaw, even now, I'll slip and cut myself on teeth. But in terms of a live shark biting me, that has never happened.
Knock on wood.
Happen. Yeah.
And I hope it. Yeah. Now that you guys asked this damn question, I'm going to get eaten this summer.
Well, you came close. We were watching one video from you a couple of years ago on the pulpit, and that shark. I'm assuming I was not there, but spectator sidelines watching the video of it. It looked like you spooked it with the hull or something to cause it to jump like that. But you were there. What happened during that? You were out of your mind excited about almost getting your feet bit off by a great white shark, by the way.
That totally freaked me out. Because I'd never experienced that. That shark, and I couldn't see that shark. That water off Orleans was really coffee-like. It was, and sometimes you get that kind of visibility where there's no visibility on the outer Cape. And it was late in the season, and then Wayne Davis, the pilot, telling me it's right under you, it's right there, and you can hear it in the video. And then out of nowhere, the shark just comes up and with its mouth wide open, and I literally looked down into the open jaws of this shark, which you see that on TV sometimes with creative photography and filmmaking, but that really, and I didn't think it was real. So if you listen to the video, I'm like, did anyone else see that? Did you see that, John, or the other boat? Did you see that? And they said, holy crap. Yeah, we saw that. That was amazing. And it was the guy on the other boat, Josh Higgins, who was driving that other boat. He actually, was so taken back by that he pulled out a piece of paper and drew it for me and said, this is what it looked like to me.
Wow.
And I thought a lot about it. I mean, I wasn't freaked out that much immediately because it was a split second. But as I watched that video over and over and over again, I can only think that shark, was making out. What they do is these animals respond to incoming information. And I think the information that animal was perceiving was, my image, some movement on the surface of the water. If you go diving and you look up, you could see very well looking up versus looking down. And that's what these sharks do. They're looking for silhouettes. They're looking for images, and they interpret these as potential prey. And I think that shark, saw my moving image and just reacted to it. It was in hunting mode and came up and was attempting to bite that image at the surface.
Wow.
And its momentum carried it out of the water, and it was wide open. So I do think it was a predatory strike. And fortunately, a failed one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fortunately, you had a little bit of protection from the pulpit below you.
And it's a well-made pulpit too. It's not like some of these other pulpits that's just a pole. I mean, it's protecting your legs.
It actually has railings. It's not like a tuna pulpit where it's just support cables going out to the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the tuna pulpits I've been out on, they're great. There's not a lot of protection, but they're much higher off the water. This pulpit has evolved. We broke this pulpit in its early stages because of, the movement on the boat. It wasn't as built as well. And they went back and totally reinforced it. It's a fantastic boat. And I was really well protected, but what gets me thinking is that shark probably couldn't have snatched me off the pulpit at all. But what if a shark comes up to the side of me and lands on me? That's what scares me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't want one of those bastards landing on me.
No, that would be bad.
That'd be bad.
Back to dissection of sharks, and you mentioned you've done a lot of it, and you've probably got this question several times, but what's the weirdest, strangest thing you've found inside of a shark?
Well, if I don't limit it to white sharks, I mean, white sharks you tend to find, marine mammals. So, and they stink,
Yeah.
So if you cut open a white shark, you'll get everything from dead whale to seals, right? And then you'll get fish. We've gotten striped bass and white sharks. But when I was younger, we were doing a lot of research cruises where we were cutting open a lot of stomachs and working with scientists. As a younger scientist myself, I was learning quite a bit on how you determine what sharks eat. And so the most exciting sharks to cut open were tiger sharks, because, has been demonstrated in scientific literature and in television, they'll eat almost anything. Mm-hmm. So, we would find horseshoe crabs in tiger sharks. We would find birds in tiger sharks. They'd snatch them off the surface. So everything basically from the bottom to the top of the water column. And one time we would find porpoise or dolphin parts as well. Wow. And one of the weirdest things we ever found, and I feel sorry for this poor dolphin, but was a dolphin penis.
Wow.
And when I was pretty young, I go, what the hell's that? And, scientist I'm working with, he tells me, and I go, oh, Christ, that poor dolphin. I hope he didn't make it.
I hope he did.
That was the end.
But we've never found license plates or anything like that. We have found garbage. Tiger sharks will eat garbage. But they're definitely the most exciting to cut up.
Wow.
That's cool.
Now I'm sure and I've seen you've been involved with a lot of the towing of seal decoys and whatnot. Have you done that in Massachusetts waters, and have you gotten action doing that before?
Well, we my agency, Division of Marine Fisheries, actually outlawed the use of decoys in state waters, and I think it's a good regulatory move.
Right.
Because there have been people out there prior to that regulation that were towing decoys and getting photographs of white sharks coming up and destroying them.
Wow.
And we felt that, and I think this was a good move. I really do. The dragging, surfboards or decoys, near swimming beaches to get these animals to strike is probably not a very good idea.
No.
Because you could condition these animals in some way to, you've got surfers there, mm-hmm. You've got people in the water, and we're really, really conservative with what we do when we're in state waters, So I haven't done that personally, at least not here in Massachusetts, and I probably won't. Just because I think it just brings, it's just perhaps not the right thing to do,
right?
In so tight to these beaches.
Makes sense.
Are they still doing it in other countries and locations? Or
it's very it's really commonly done in South Africa.
Yeah.
Most of the ecotourism boats that are also taking people cage diving will tow decoys, surfboards, seal decoys. To try to get those sharks to strike for photographic purposes, so that does happen over there.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see both sides of that. I'm sure at some point you learned a good amount from doing that, but then I would think it would plateau out to the point that you really don't need to be doing it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you can learn a certain amount about the predatory strike behavior of these animals. It's a little more challenging for white sharks in Cape Cod because it's so shallow. Whereas so the strike is more lateral, coming, from the side. In South Africa, those animals are in 60 to 100 feet of water, and they're wading down at those depths for the silhouette. Again, they're waiting for the seals to come overhead, and allows them to get great speed and momentum. And we've all seen them strike these seals. And in essence, what they're doing is they're pinning them against the surface, because the seals are leaving or coming back to the island in order to, they go offshore to feed, and then they come back. And when the shark pins the seal, its speed, it relies really heavily on stealth. So it does it with such speed and strength that it carries the shark completely out of the water.
Wow.
And that's why you get these really amazing, missile launches and acrobatic displays from those sharks.
It's incredible.
Do you want him to try to adjust his collar again?
I think you're all right, but yeah, you may have to go turtleneck, Greg. You might have to do it.
Oh shit!
You're fine though. We'll be able to figure it out in post. I have a great version of this question I can't let go out of my brain right now. Okay. So we're talking about speed. We're talking about stealth. We ask a similar question, or we
do a lot of tuna interviews.
Oh, great. Yeah, we used to do more. I used to do a lot with tuna. Yeah. Not so much anymore.
But if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, shit. That's a tough one.
Or if you could have like one quality a shark has, perhaps, what would it be?
I mean, Aquaman's got it made, right?
Yeah.
So, if I could do what Aquaman can do, that would be just absolutely phenomenal, right? The guy can breathe underwater and move at great speed, know?
Yeah. Right.
But I also like flying. I think flying would be fantastic, because I am, after all, a terrestrial animal. And, if I could get over to Chatham, in 15 minutes, because I flew there, and then I can survey around for white sharks and observe them from the air like we do with drones.
Right.
That would be absolutely really cool.
It would be.
Because I don't know necessarily that I'd want to be swimming with a lot of those white sharks, even if I was Aquaman, down under the water while they're hunting seals.
Yeah. That's interesting hearing that from him.
It is.
It definitely solidifies my decision to never swim in the beaches around here.
Exactly. Basically, what we're saying then is you want to be like a gannet. You want to be able to fly high, go in the water for a brief period of time to see what's going on, but you don't really want to be down there very long.
Right. I mean, with these sharks, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if I could fly to the canyons, I mean,
that would be wild, wouldn't it?
And then be able to go in the water with a school of hammerheads or whale sharks or tunas or yellowfins or whatever is going on out there. That would be great. I mean, instead of, 4 hours in a boat steaming.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be cool.
That's awesome. We've gone through that. Our last kind of dovetail into the meat and potatoes is we've gone through how Jaws was a major inspiration for you in your career, and basically looking up to Matt Hooper and wanting to become him, which in our eyes you have become him. But how did you become so passionate, I guess, about the ocean and what you do, taking Jaws out of the equation?
Well, you got to think of it in terms of, Greg Skomal as a little kid, right? You watch little kids play with plastic sharks or dinosaurs, and they're super excited, right? Now, imagine that little kid growing up and being able to continue to play with sharks. That excitement really doesn't go away, for many of us who are in this field. It's a childhood dream. It's a passion. It's really more of like doing what you love to do and getting paid to do it,
right? Which
is, a luxury, if you think about it. How many people in this world get to do that? And, a lot of fishermen I know have that same, passion. And it might take a little bit to tap into it, but they love doing what they do. And if you love doing what you do, those childhood characteristics or tendencies or emotions, continue to come out, even though you might be 60 years old, So, I love my job. I love, being able to interact with these animals, study them. But I equally love producing information that would ultimately lead to, sustainable conservation, sustainable fisheries management, and even enhancing public safety, which has become a really big part of what we're doing these days. It's just a matter of being passionate about, what you love to do. If let's say you love to ski, but you can't get a job doing it, but watch people who love to ski. They're having the time of their lives,
right?
Yeah.
Now imagine if you paid them to do that. They're even happier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing to do when it comes to researching sharks? Is it being out there, tagging them, seeing them? Like, is there like a specific thing that when you wake up, it's like waking up Christmas morning?
Well, I think every time I get on the boat, and you guys are passionate about fishing and other outdoor activities, it's wake up in the morning saying, I'm going to go out today. I'm going to see a white shark, and that's just the White Shark Project. We do, and that gets a lot of attention, obviously, right. But I'm involved in a number of research projects, tagging tiger sharks in the Caribbean, hammerheads in the Florida Keys, getting up in the morning and knowing that day you're going out and you're going to, catch a shark, you're going to put tags on it. That's really riveting stuff. That's super exciting to me, Yeah. Maybe not equally as exciting, but also very rewarding is, looking at data coming back from these tags, and seeing patterns that tell us about how this animal lives, is really cool,
Right.
Discovering, for example, that they live, over 70 years. I mean, that's really cool. That's rewarding.
That's insane.
That no one would have dreamed that, but that's really, that's like, wow, that's a really cool fact. And you helped produce that fact. That's fantastic.
Do you want to tangent down that?
Yeah, go for it.
How did you guys prove that fact? Like, how did you come up with that fact?
And almost everything I might use I and me a few times, but it really is a we. There's
right.
I collaborate with lots of great scientists, and everything we do is team oriented. I sometimes become the face of that team, but in terms of like the age of growth work, we partnered with scientists at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution who did some really interesting, carbon-based dating. Bomb carbon-based dating on shark vertebrae that we had sampled many, many, many years ago. I partnered with the National Marine Fisheries Service scientist as well as part of that study. And by looking at the components of the vertebrae of the shark, the backbone of the shark, we were able to estimate longevity, get longevity estimates, minimum ages, and showing that, God, this animal had to have lived over 70 years. And then we can count rings in the vertebrae, which you would very similar to counting rings on a tree, a little more complicated, but getting a sense of how that animal grew over time and how old those specific individuals were and developing growth curves. And so it really is a multifaceted task with various experts coming to the table to produce this synergy of good science.
It's wild. How many years did that take to come to fruition?
Well, once you collect the vertebrae, and that's the hard part.
Right.
White sharks nowadays are prohibited from retention, so it's not like I can go out and kill a white shark and take its backbone.
Right.
But fortunately, the National Marine Fisheries Service program in Narragansett, Rhode Island, the shark tagging program there, they've been and I used to work there. They've been sampling backbones from dozens of shark species going back to the early 1960s.
Wow.
So, we had this cache of 100+ backbones, going back to that time that we could look at, and then once you start looking at them, you're talking about probably, a couple of years of work going into that.
Now, compared to like tiger sharks and mako sharks and other, I guess, local sought after sharks, do white sharks live much longer than those species?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Perhaps twice as long.
Wow.
We know makos will get up over 30 years old. Tigers will get up, into their 20s. But that kind of longevity we're seeing in these white sharks is fairly unique in the shark world.
You wonder why.
There are exceptions. Greenland sharks have been estimated to live over 300 years.
Right.
It's because they're frozen.
Crazy.
That's because they're frozen in
time.
carbonite up there.
Yeah.
Have you seen those sharks, I'm assuming?
Yeah, back in the late 90s, I did a big research project in the Arctic Circle where we were diving under 6 feet of frozen ice.
Wow.
God,
Scared the living crap
I'm
out
all
of me.
set with that.
Yeah. And as a kid, I said I'd never do that. As a young diver, I got certified in the 70s, but I said, no, that's the one diving I won't do. That and cave diving. I'm not super interested in cave diving, but 20 years later, I find myself under 6 feet of Arctic ice, down 50 feet with a 9-foot Greenland shark. And thinking to myself, what the hell am I
must
doing?
have went through your head at that
I was
moment.
scared to death.
That is unbelievable.
Fun times.
On the topic of white shark age, move into size. You've probably been asked this thousands of times, but what is the largest white shark you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, the largest I've seen in the Atlantic has to be a shark we named Curly. And Curly was 18 feet long and feeding on a dead whale about 15 miles east of Chatham in 2010. And I get reports of dead whales, so we went out there, found it, and I actually went diving with that shark in a cage, though, and just an amazing animal. And you've heard this before, but it's really the girth that's most impressive on these sharks because if you take a tape measure and measure it around, it's like 8 to 10 feet around, and about like 4 feet wide. And it's just a massive animal. And you look at that and you think in terms of the power, because about, 65-70% of that animal is going to be muscle, right? Yeah. And so, like a lot of big fish. And so it's just absolutely amazing to see and to be around one of those animals.
That's incredible.
Go ahead.
Do you see, we see it with bluefin, pretty much every highly migratory species that we have up here, but do you see a lot of changes in their body type, size when they migrate into our waters in May time and then when they leave in December? Like, are
they gaining weight?
Are they gaining weight, or do they maintain that girth and mass when they get to a specific age and it doesn't really differ all that much in your observations?
That's hard. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. It's hard for us to gauge that. If like in tunas, because there's there's a big fishery for them,
right?
And harpooners may get them in June, and then we may get them. Guys might get them in October, November. You could really see the changes in fat content as these animals become, just bulk up. White sharks, because we just don't have the ability. First of all, you don't see the fat content in sharks like you do with tunas. You just don't. And then it's really hard. The best way to do that would be to look at liver fat, for example, in sharks. So if you start killing a bunch of makos in June, and then you start killing a bunch of makos in October, you might be able to see changes in their fat content in the liver and size of their liver, because that's where they store fat as opposed to in their bodies, in their muscle. And so you could do that kind of work. With white sharks, because there's no fishery for them, you got to look at them and say, all right, is the girth bigger on that fish than it was when we saw it 2 months ago?
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to gauge.
Yeah. I imagine it would be.
But I suspect they do bulk up.
Yeah.
I suspect that when they migrate up here in late May, early June, after spending the winter off of the southeastern U.S., they're probably, lacking in terms of body condition. And then by the end of, November, early December, when they're leaving, they will have fed on all the resources we've got here in New England in the summertime, which includes, scavenging dead whales, seal species, and then, other species of fish.
What's their primary diet southeast of Florida?
Good
question. Southeast of Florida, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
southeast, basically south of Hatteras.
Okay.
So they'll overwinter south of Hatteras, and we think they feed on anything from dolphins and porpoises, scavenging whale carcasses, which they will absolutely take advantage of anytime they can,
Right.
to a variety of fish species, which could be anything from, other sharks to snappers, drums, you name it. So it's a much broader diet with a high diversity of species.
Interesting. Now, the seals seem like they're here almost year round, correct?
Oh, they are.
They're here year round in our water. So is it based purely off of the water temperature, whether or not the white sharks aren't here year round?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely. I mean, their food is here in great abundance,
Right,
year round. And when I say here, I don't only mean Cape Cod, but all the way up to the Gulf of Maine and Canadian waters. I mean, that's where the bulk of the gray and harbor seal population is. And you're talking, in the case of the gray seal, probably in excess of 500,000 animals, and so plenty to eat. But our water temperatures just chill off too much, and even though white sharks have the capacity to retain body heat and elevate their body temperature, they can't push beyond, once temperatures drop below 50, 48, 47 degrees, we'll see them getting out of here.
Yeah, just like tunas, it sounds like. Almost the same migration in and out of this area.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting.
With the tunas, we've noticed, I mean, we're not scientists, but we've noticed their migration in that threshold, at least according to our sounder instruments on the boat, is definitely seems to be in that 50 to 55 degree range. And then when they leave, they seem to be able to tolerate just sub 50 degrees before they actually leave. Like they have more tolerance on the migration out than on the migration
46,
in.
47 probably.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, are you talking sea surface temperature?
Yeah.
Right.
Sea surface temperature.
Yeah, so subsurface, it's probably the same.
Yeah, I mean, early in the season, you're going to have a probably pretty good thermocline that's going to break up over the course of the summer, and that warmer water will penetrate deeper by the end of the summer. And so, those fish will, just like the sharks, they're going to, you really have to think in terms of the entire water column, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of arrival and departure times. And I think, we'll see the latest we've seen white sharks stick around is generally 17th, 18th, 19th of December, where I think you can get tunas a little bit later than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were basically catching them
up until Christmas.
Through almost the New Year's.
There were a handful of fish up in Jeffries that were caught on New Year's when the quota reopened the start of the year.
Yeah, and they've got a really efficient, I mean, when it comes to bluefin tuna, they're one of the most advanced species of fish on the planet. And so they've got a really highly evolved endothermic system, which means that they can retain body heat, not only in their viscera, but in their muscles, but also in their brain and eyes. So they probably have a greater capacity to tolerate cold water than the white shark does.
Have you ever been to North Lake, Prince Edward Island?
I have not, no.
I'm going to text you after this podcast a very scientific image of a bluefin tuna that labels all of their parts, and you will get an absolute kick out of it.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah,
I'll send it to you.
Send that to me.
I'll
guys.
send it
That'd
to you
be great.
after this. Absolutely.
They actually had quite a few white sharks this year.
They did,
right?
yeah. And they had some fish, swimming their fish. They're not allowed to harvest as many as we are, so they take real pride in their product up there. And there's quite a few that were lost to shark attacks, swimming them, getting the lactic acid out. I feel like it's more and more every year, especially up there.
It is. It appears to be, absolutely, and I think that's tightly linked to a couple of things. But first of all, based on work we did now back in 2014, it really looks like the white shark population took a hit in the 70s, 80s, early 90s. And then now with first of all, the prohibition on retention in 97, and the fact that we've really, over the course of the last 20 years have pulled a lot of hooks out of the water. I mean, our longline fishery has been severely diminished. Gillnet fisheries have been diminished. And even our hook and line fisheries have been diminished in terms of quotas and those kinds of things. And that has allowed the white shark population now to respond to protection. And it's growing along the eastern seaboard of the U.S. and Canada. That coupled with the fact that you've got this growing seal population that they're taking notice of. So that's drawing them closer to shore, where they're going to interact more with other fisheries and with people.
Yeah.
And so we've got the combination of a growing white shark population and a shift in distribution in response to this, massive food resource that's piled up on the shoreline, where we're going to see more and more white sharks, not only here in New England, the Gulf of Maine, but up to Canada.
Well, that basically answers that question about, do you think that the population is increasing, or do you think our science is getting better? You truly think it's increasing?
I actually do. Yeah. And that's based on the best available science. And my Canadian colleagues are seeing more white sharks, and obviously we're seeing more white sharks. My spotter pilots, who I've worked with for a very long time and have been doing this since the early tuna days of purse seining, they're seeing more white sharks. And Christ, those guys are 70 years old. So, I trust, you guys probably know this. I work with commercial and recreational fishermen, have been doing that my whole career. And I trust their observations and their eyes, in many cases, a lot more than I would trust perhaps fellow scientists.
Doing those spotter plane white shark searches around our area in Massachusetts, what's like your typical day? Are you seeing patterns where you see them come in certain areas, that they show up certain times of the day in certain areas on certain tides, or is it very random? Just a section of beach they randomly roam in and roam out?
Yeah, we've been since we've been doing this so long, and we've put out a lot of tags. We now have amassed, a lot of data. So this has allowed us to better answer that question. So what we're using to do that is our acoustic database. So with the way the acoustic tags work, and we've put out over 200 of those, is they emit high frequency sounds that are picked up by an array of receivers that we've put out all over Massachusetts. And what that allows us to do is model, when these sharks are close to shore and in certain areas. Is it driven by tide? Is it driven by time of day? Is it driven by lunar cycle? And we've just recently, and I say we because almost all of this work is being done by Atlantic White Shark Conservancy scientist Megan Winton, who's also getting her PhD based on this science. She's done a whole bunch of modeling over the last several months, and we're really seeing that there's no solid pattern, that we could look at. And that's really frustrating for us. We're seeing a lot of individual behaviors. Like we might have one shark that only comes in to Cape Cod shallow areas, during the daytime. And then we'll have another shark that comes in only at night. We do see that there's a
Wow,
that's insane to me.
And that really screws up science, because it just means there's no pattern that works for the whole species. You guys know as fishermen that you're targeting, you might be targeting bluefin at slack tide, or
right.
you may be doing certain things certain times of the year because the bluefin are doing that. With white sharks, we're not seeing those kinds of patterns. Where tide's not making much of a difference. We're seeing a subtle correlation with the lunar cycle, where we're seeing perhaps slightly more sharks at a new moon coming in closer to shore, which is, might be counterintuitive, where the sharks, you'd expect them to be using a full moon to their advantage trying to hunt seals, but perhaps they're relying on total darkness to help disguise them from the seals. But it's been a little bit frustrating. So we keep doing this. We keep adding different variables to see if anything comes out relative to this nearshore behavior. What we can say is they're spending almost half their time in water less than 15 feet deep. And so that's pretty interesting. Because if
that's alarming.
We saw that stat this morning,
did,
and
and
our eyes were
I
almost
almost
popped
spit
out
up
of
my
our head.
coffee.
Yeah, that's got people freaking out a little bit, and I don't blame them. So if I'm managing a beach, if I'm managing Nauset Beach, I'm thinking, all right, there's a 50% chance that any one of these sharks is going to be in shallow water any given time. That's a pretty high proportion of time.
Right.
And people need to take that into consideration.
And how many, I know you can't answer this, but out of your experience, how many sharks are on a given week or a given month, different sharks are coming up to Massachusetts waters? Or I guess if you want to separate it from Chatham to in the Bay, are you seeing any kind of repeat sharks year after year? Are you seeing it, increase certain times of the year inside and outside the Bay? I know there's a lot of questions kind of raveled into one, but.
No, it's a good question. And it's one we're working on pretty intensively. And again, Megan, it's all part of her dissertation, her PhD research in terms of quantifying, what these animals are doing and how many are there. And we get repeat customers every year. Sometimes as high as, 50, 60% of what we're seeing are animals we've already seen before. Right. But each year we're also recruiting new individuals. And so for 5 years, we went out and intensively tried to find every shark we could, any given day. And we'd go up to 20, 30 individual sharks in a given day. And we'd be able to determine who is that shark based on color patterns, scarring patterns, fin shapes, or the presence of tags. And so we've cataloged well over 500 individual sharks over the course of that 5-year period. Now, the thing is, they're not all there any given day,
Right.
And that changes, over the course of the season, and think of it as a bell-shaped curve. Early on, you're not getting a lot of sharks. They kind of trickle in. So late May, most of June, there's not a lot of sharks around. July, it starts to ramp up, and it'll ramp up depending on water temperature and how fast that changes. And then August, September, October are really peak months. That's when we see the most sharks here. And then they start to leave in October, and by early November, a lot of them have gone. They bugged out usually as we start to get those northeast winds, and those storm events move through.
Yeah.
Those sharks just don't stick around. And then by mid-December, they're gone. And so, now we're taking those seed numbers, 500 plus individuals, and we're going to extrapolate that to the population size. What does that mean? Does that mean 5,000 fish? Does that mean, 1,000 fish? And it's probably, somewhere in between. But we're doing that now. We're hoping actually to get that done in the next couple of months.
That's awesome. We'd be interested to see that.
We would. We paused this episode for a quick announcement for one of our good friends and fellow charter captains, Jesse Martello. Jesse's son, Jesse Jr., was recently diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia called T-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And while the outlook for Jesse is optimistic, the battle is just beginning. The doctor's initial prognosis indicates that Jesse Jr. is in for a fight that could last 3 years, with chemotherapy and many hospital visits during what should be the prime years of his youth. And Jesse's an avid fisherman. He mates regularly for his dad and their charter business, Think Big Charters, aboard their boat Necessary Expense. They fish from Connecticut to the Northeast Canyons. They tuna fish. They're a part of our community, and they're great people. Jesse Jr. also enjoys playing soccer, basketball, lacrosse. He races go-karts. He skis, he snowmobiles. It's really sad that he has to deal with this at this point in his life, but we're here to support Jesse, and we're hoping that you all can take a moment and help support him as well. Right now, Jesse's family faces uncertainty with medical costs and other financial burdens associated with treating this disease. And to help ease the burden, there's been a website that's been set up to help facilitate fundraising efforts and help aid Jesse Jr.'s family and the entire Martello family with expenses that they're going to face during this battle. So if you take a moment and visit thinkbigjesse.com, that's thinkbigjesse.com. Starting on February 15th, there's going to be a series of raffles and auctions for some really great items and some charters, Penn and Real Easy custom rods. They're donating reels, rods. There's many other sponsors and supporters on there, many of which have sponsored and supported the podcast as well. And we just hope you take a moment to go on the website and support a great cause for a great kid. So again, visit thinkbigjesse.com and feel free to donate and participate in any of the raffles and the silent auctions. Are you noticing any patterns with the juvenile great white sharks, in particular in the bay?
Yeah, I mean the bay is definitely a phenomenon that we relied quite heavily on the charter fleet and the private boat fleet that pounds the bay, and they, you saw what they've been seeing, in terms of social media posts, and we decided that we were going to start spending a little more time in the bay ourselves. And they do tend to be smaller individuals, younger sharks, likely feeding on bass and other fish species, up on the shoals in the bay, and that's exactly what the charter captains have been seeing. We've tagged a few sharks up in the bay. We spent a bit of time in the bay in 2019. We went to the bay a little bit in 2021. We did not get into the bay, largely because of weather, but also limitations related to other aspects of vessel issues. But I'm still hoping to spend more time in the bay. We found that the Brewster Flats and Billingsgate Shoal were the hot spots in the bay.
Wow.
Which is exactly what the charter captains were telling us, reeling in bass on those areas and having them parted off. We expect smaller fish will target the bass because that's exactly what they do. Juveniles will feed almost exclusively on fish unless there's a whale carcass or a dead seal. They're just not capable of targeting seals at that smaller size, smaller being less than, say, 9 feet long.
That's actually it's kind of surprising to me, though, because you'd think they'd be faster. They'd be able to catch the seals easier, maim them, and then eat them.
Yeah, but they're what's kind of interesting. White sharks kind of have go through a puberty, if you will. When they're kind of skinny, fast, small. Even their tooth shape is like a mako tooth. It's sharply pointed and really good for grabbing squid, fish. Chomping them in half, grabbing them, swallowing them whole. So they'll target those schooling fishes, striped bass, a lot of bottom fish, maybe hakes and ground fish. But as they go through this puberty, even their body shape changes. They get muscular, far more muscular. The muscles supporting their jaws become bulkier and stronger, and they lose those baby teeth, and they start getting that nicely triangular serrated cutting tool, which is perfect for dispatching a seal or gouging hunks of flesh out of a dead whale. And so their body shape allows them to become stronger. And remember, seals don't just say, "Oh, shit, you got me.
Right.
I'll just die."
They fight for their lives.
Back.
Yeah.
They got teeth and they got sharp claws. And so a lot of those big white sharks that we see have big rake marks on them around their head, their gills, as these seals fight back. So the smaller white sharks just don't, although they have the speed, they don't have the capacity to kill a 2, 3, 4, 500-pound seal.
It's amazing. Back to your Billingsgate Shoal comment, actually in 2019, we were a part of that fleet down there. And I specifically remember we were out the day before you guys went in there. And my numbers are probably wrong, but
I want to say several days
before, a day or two before.
Yeah.
But the bass fishing was excellent. It was awesome, quality fish. It was a pretty decent troll bite in the morning, and then the fish kind of settled through as the day went on. We were chumming, live bait fishing. When we were chumming, live bait fishing, we had marks on the screen that looked like tuna marks. You know, we're like, there's no way these are bass. And then fast forward a day or two later, you guys go in there, and I think you tagged, at least a half a dozen sharks in there on the shoal, which is absolutely crazy to me that they were just in there the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, the most we've tagged in there is 4. So, but we saw quite a few.
Yeah.
And we saw previously tagged fish. And we know from our tagging data that those sharks that we tag on the outer cape will come into the bay. They don't go as tight to shore as they do on the outer cape, because the seals just aren't piled up in the big numbers until you get to like Army Point or inside Provincetown Harbor. But, they will work the shoals, even those bigger slobs. And the bigger slobs will go out to Stellwagen Bank. Last summer we had a dead whale up on the southwest corner of Stellwagen.
Yeah, we saw that actually.
Yeah. And the 3 sharks that came to that whale were all giant females, in the 15, 16-foot range, which we don't really see tight to the beaches on the outer cape. And so those bigger sharks are probably targeting bluefin. They may be sucking up a bunch of small fish, bottom fish, maybe eating other sharks. They love dogfish. They will eat lots of spiny dogs. And then they're looking for whale carcasses, because they feast on a whale carcass over the course of a day. They'll eat 50, 60 pounds of blubber. They probably don't have to eat for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. And so it's worth it for them just to spend their time, instead of battling the currents, the shoals, sandbars, and surf zone, trying to get seals, stay out offshore, wait for the seals to come to you and look for dead whales, and then why not work the edges of Billingsgate, and then, where those smaller sharks are, maybe even try to take down one of those smaller sharks.
Yeah. Have you seen the bigger females eat smaller great whites?
We haven't seen that, because I just haven't, I haven't dissected enough big white sharks. We just don't have access to those specimens. But we're gonna do more and more drone work, and I think that's where we're gonna see this kind of behavior.
And have you seen the white sharks push other sharks away? Like, are the makos, the threshers, the poor beagles scared of the white sharks, or do they kind of commingle?
Well, the only place we get to see them, interact is on dead whales. A dead whale will draw lots of blue dogs.
Right.
Not so much poor beagles and makos. Makos pretty much are offshore fish. They rarely come inside, 3 miles. They're not even really well adapted for scavenging whales. They will take down dolphins and porpoises. They absolutely will do that. And I think they'll take an occasional seal offshore. Big makos. And big makos will take down other sharks. I've taken blue sharks out of the bellies of makos, big makos.
Yeah. Wow.
900
Pretty sure we had that happen
makos.
once. I think we had that happen once out on Wildcat. Actually, I had a blue shark get eaten.
I believe that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. But when a big white shark's working a dead whale, the blue sharks will definitely stay away from it and stay below it.
Huh.
But the blue sharks aren't all that stupid. The white shark will come up and rip a big hole in that whale. And the teeth of the white shark, like I said, are really good for that. And then the blue sharks will grab the snacks, the scraps, right? They'll come up and start working that same hole that the white shark tore open. But the white shark comes back in, the blue sharks will go back down. And then they'll pick up the little scraps that are falling from the whale carcass as the bigger white sharks tear it apart. So they've got this kind of mutual agreement where, you big boys have at it. We'll stay out of your way. We'll eat the popcorn. Maybe we can come in and eat a little steak every now and then, but we'll stay low, stay out of your way. And I haven't seen the white shark go after the blues.
Wow. They taste disgusting. I don't know what would ever want to eat a blue shark anyways.
And they urinate through their skin.
The Portuguese eat them.
Really?
Yeah, and the Spanish. Yeah, there's big fisheries for blue sharks in the mid-Atlantic by those countries.
They must cook them away. I did not know.
I think they dry a lot of it.
Yeah,
and they salt it. They salt it like cod, and which I think ruins cod, but that's beside the point.
What's your favorite fish to eat?
I love any of the ground fish. I love cod, haddock, pollock. Love it. I love. I like to fish Buzzards Bay, even though I've been living here 10 years, I'm still trying to learn it. I keep my boat not too far from my house here, and I'll eat everything. Yeah, anything from fluke to bass to love black sea bass. Most species here in New England, and even a fresh bluefish. Boy, I love it.
Yeah. You still get out fishing yourself quite a bit, or are you still tied up in research and shark tagging?
Well, I went through this phase where when I lived on the vineyard for 20 years. And I was really into fishing and had a boat out there and fished with all my buddies. And we were, year round, we fished for something, and, whether it was mackerels coming into Menemsha or squid, we'd be jigging stuff. And, almost year round. Well, in the winter, we went to shellfish, scallops and clams. Then I moved off and, fishing. I was doing a lot of fishing for work. When we were doing all our tuna work, we were targeting everything from, yellowfin to bluefins to sharks. And so almost fishing became like work to me. And then I started doing more of the white shark stuff, tagging free swimming fish. And then I had kids, and now the kids want to fish. So that's drawing me back into it.
That's cool.
And so the last 3 to 5 years, I've been doing a lot more fishing. I went out and bought a whaler and used, of course. And now, I fish all over the bay trying to find a good spot for fluke or black sea bass, all that stuff. Occasionally run to the islands and mess around there. But I do because the kids are into it.
Yeah.
They've really brought me back full circle into loving fishing.
That's awesome. Any catches, stories, lost fish that just forever are branded in your mind, or?
Mostly associated with big fish fishing in the old days. The big bluefin. You guys do it. The big bluefins that got away. The yellowfins that get away. The canyon fish, the marlins. Lost a bunch of marlin in my years. We were blood sampling marlin for a study we were doing back in the 90s, and sampling big blue marlin and white marlins. And then, I'd travel to fish for various TV shows we were doing or projects we were doing. Fish in the Gulf of Mexico on, where they're drilling for oil on those big rigs and trying to get yellowfins. Oh, man.
Sounds like you miss it a little bit.
I do. Yeah. I do miss some of this stuff, or try to get big bull sharks, God. Yeah.
What sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm thinking of it and I don't want to forget it. What, other than a great white, what shark, actually, I'm going to get rid of tiger shark as well, because I think that was the answer in one of your YouTube videos, but what sharks do you feel are the most dangerous shark?
Well, when I talk about shark danger, I go right to the statistics, just like an insurance agent would, right?
Yeah.
Which is why 16-year-olds have to pay so much for insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, bull sharks. So it's always going to be the tiger, the bull, and the white shark. Those are the top three implicated in the most attacks on humans over in history. And so, I really do think that the bull shark is a badass, because it's like that, that kid in high school that you look at him and you say, I can't believe that kid's a bully because he's not as big as the other bullies. The white and the tiger are big fish that feed on big things, and so they screw up. Bull sharks almost just like do it because they have an attitude. Now bulls can get big. I've been in the water with really big bull sharks, but they got a territorial aspect to them. They're all fired up, and they're a bit scary because I think they're a bit more unpredictable than the tiger and the white. And I get a little edgy with bull sharks, and had my share of doing stuff with them, and I think it's really cool stuff I have done, and enjoyed being in the water with them. But I'm always like watching my back, because I just don't know when they're gonna like lose it, and go for you. But yeah, the bull is the one that I'd be most nervous probably with.
Longboat Key Bridge.
Oh gosh.
we spent some time down in Anna Marie Island and Longboat Key fishing, family and all that down there. And there's that bridge and inlet down there. And as young kids, we never really understood how many bull sharks and sharks can be in that inlet until we went fishing there with our buddy, and it took approximately 7 seconds to hook one.
Yeah. And the charter guys hate those damn things down there. They're a pain in the ass for them, especially if they're tarpon fishing or whatever. But yeah. We're doing a big study down in the Keys now with hammerheads. We were going to involve bulls, but mostly just hammerheads and tarpon, and it's a bit of a problem down there because the tarpon fishermen are trying to bring in their tarpon, and the big hammerheads, the great hammerheads, are chewing them in half.
Right,
and that makes for a bad day.
It does. It's crazy with the new electronics and stuff too, and side scan, and watching some of these guys fish for tarpon on the beach and actually marking those great hammerheads just outside the school. It's pretty wild.
Sounds like the white sharks with the seals.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those white sharks will challenge themselves to get as close as they can, and some of them have screwed up to the point where they get beached.
Really?
But it doesn't happen as much as it used to, which is really wild to me because they've apparently figured it out. But, in the early years, of doing this, meaning 2010, 11, 12, 13, we would see white sharks, high and dry on the beach because they screwed up trying to get to their, Scooby snack.
Yeah. Before I ask that, I got one question. You've done filming in everywhere. What are pick a few places that, you would say are your highlights of your career as far as filming and locations and the people and the sharks or any fish that you've done. I mean, you fish for film for Shark Week and done all that. What are some of the stories or some people that you've met along the way that, have been important in your life?
Yeah. I mean, one of the studies I did with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution was, and this wasn't a film project, was actually in Saudi Arabia, which was really, this was back in 2012, 13, 14. We were studying whale sharks and the Red Sea. We're on the Red Sea side of things. It's just an amazing place for all kinds of fish, from tunas to sharks. And we were doing a whale shark project. So I have to say that was a really interesting place to work from a cultural perspective, because we all have, we all have preconceived notions based on what we've learned here in the U.S. about Saudi Arabia. So you go there and you'd be crazy if you're not scared to death, from a cultural point of view. But, actually living there for weeks and working with locals, and it was really quite fascinating. And I got a better understanding of their culture. But also being able to go diving every day in the Red Sea with whale sharks and tunas and other species of sharks and coral reef fishes was absolutely stunning, But some of my favorite film projects, I already talked a little bit about Greenland sharks. That was actually a film project up in the Arctic Circle. And I got to say that as cold as it was and as frightening as it was really amazing to be in remote areas and working with local Inuit people who are our guides and bring us living on the ice, bring us out to the ice and diving under the ice with really strange creatures like Greenland sharks, just amazing. And, but I think what I love most is going to tropical areas, and diving with sharks. And so bimini diving with hammerheads and bulls was amazing. And then off Grand Bahama Island, there's a place called Tiger Beach. We made a film there. And I was diving at one point with 5 or 6 species of sharks, including tigers, hammerheads, bulls, lemons, and nurse sharks, and Caribbean reef sharks. So 6 species of sharks, all circling me in crystal clear water in 30 feet, and just hunkered down with a little GoPro,
Wow.
You're going, ooh, wee, ooh, wee. that's like a childhood dream come true. I mean, just spectacular. You know, if someone says to me, I want to go diving with sharks and I can only do one trip before I die, I would probably send them to Tiger Beach in the Bahamas, just because of the diversity of species, the conditions, the temperature of the water. It's shallow, so you don't have to be a deep diver to do it. Just stunning, you know, and the Bahamian people are just really cool, you know.
Yeah.
And all of the Bahamas is a shark sanctuary. So it's like, you know, it's just fantastic.
And so is Hawaii now, correct? Didn't they just pass that? Yeah.
Yeah, Hawaii's, you know, another great place to go diving with sharks, you know, Hawaii. At one point in my career, I went to this tiny atoll, which was 800 miles south of Hawaii. It was back when I was doing my PhD, and that's called Johnston Atoll. And it was just loaded with Galapagos sharks and white-tip reefs, gray reef sharks, white-tip reef sharks, just incredible reefs. That was stunning. You know, I just love tropical areas because it's warm. It's warm, and the older I get, the more I want to just be in warm water.
Absolutely, and you can see.
Yeah. I mean, New Englanders were kind of used to the low visibility, but boy, the older I get, the more I just don't want to dive in it.
Yeah.
Do you think you're safer in those clearer waters?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. You know, and it all has to do with the species too you're dealing with.
Right.
You know, I think tigers for the most part are, you know, it's when it comes to shark attack, it really boils down to the sharks you don't see, right? Remember, for a shark to successfully attack and kill something, it needs to use speed and stealth. It's an ambush predator, you know, and bulls might be your only exception, but the big tiger shark swimming around in front of you is going to be like a big Saint Bernard.
Right.
You know, it's just checking out whatever chum you got, and it might even let you pet it, you know, even though I tend not to want to do that. But, you know, they're just big, lazy slobs. You know, it's the shark that's coming in from behind that you got to be concerned about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lazy slob story. We were fighting a yellowfin in the canyons, looking down at it, doing pinwheels under the boat. Probably like a 60, 70 pounder.
About 60, 70 feet deep, too.
Yeah, it was clear. It was at night. We had the underwater lights on, and this tiger shark came out, and we thought it was swimming up to it just to look at it, but it swam up. I'll never forget it. So slow. Like, it was like it was in slow motion, just a slow paddle up, and the fish is pinwheeling pretty quickly, and it just timed it around on a pinwheel and literally just swam up nice and slow, opened its mouth, and ate a 70-pound yellowfin in one bite. And all of us were just like, did that really just happen? It looked fake.
This might have been me imagining it, but it almost like created a shadow, like almost blacked out the underwater lights for a moment as it came through.
Yeah. I mean, it had to be close to 4 feet wide.
Yeah.
You know, up.
Oh, there's monsters out there.
Yeah.
You know, we had that big 13-footer that came in. It was 1,200 pounds during a shark tournament.
Yep.
Damon Sacco's fish.
Yep.
I mean, there's big slobs out there. I went out with Damon a couple of years later and tagged one. I mean, there's big slobs out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's hammerheads. There's all kinds of fish. That's like an aquarium. I mean, to be out in the canyons on a calm, you know, few days is just heaven.
It's world class. It's unbelievable.
You're sitting in the Gulf Stream. It is just heaven. Mm-hmm. You know.
I got one more random question before we get into this part. You talked all about seals and you know, the types of fish all these sharks eat locally. We've shark fished a ton offshore on our charters, and I've only had in my whole lifetime one white shark that actually didn't even come up to the boat because we started chumming. It was actually right when we pulled up to the spot, came out and checked us out and was gone. Do white sharks not respond to like normal store-bought chum, or are they purely hunting off of eyesight? Are they hunting off of
mammal scent
stuff? Like, is there a reason why we don't see them chumming? We could chum 40, 50 times a season. for multiple years in a row and not see a white shark, and then 15 miles south, you guys are seeing them in the seals.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. For 20 years, I collected data at shark tournaments, and I would survey every single boat as to not only what they caught and brought in, but also what they caught and released. And for the bulk of my career doing that, it was extremely rare for any of those guys to see or encounter a white shark. And when they did, it would either just be a flyby, or the sharks staying far away and checking them out from a distance or deep. Yeah. They never stuck around. It's almost, I've always been fascinated by it. And that actually carries forward. That goes all the way back to, colleagues of mine who were sampling tournaments in New York, New Jersey, dating back to the 60s. The rare incidence of white sharks in tournament catches by tournament participants and encounters is uncanny. And I think it's just because these animals don't have any interest in what we're showing them. Huh. There might be a curiosity factor. They will check out things at the surface. We see them, go up to check out a sunfish, a mola at the surface. We'll see a white shark, see it, go up to it, check it out, and then go away. Floating garbage, lobster pots, buoys, they'll check them out because they're interested. What is that? And then they'll keep going. It's like whatever we're presenting, whether it's ground, menhaden, herring, mackerel, even bluefish, which I fished a lot with, they didn't give a shit about it. It wasn't
strange.
It didn't fire them up. It's like they're so tuned into marine mammals and perhaps other sharks, things that they naturally eat, that what we present to them, they're just not interested in chasing around, little bluefish and mackerels and stuff. It's just not worth their time and energy. And therefore it's not part of their sensory array in terms of taste and smell. And that hasn't changed all that much. I mean, I still talk to a lot of offshore guys, and the fleet has really dropped out from years ago.
For sharks,
for sharks, obviously tuna's big still, and the canyon runners, but for sharks, not a lot of guys do it. Maybe a handful of charter captains. Mm-hmm.
We used to do so much of it.
We
now.
rarely do it now.
Now we rarely do.
Yeah.
It.
Yeah. The tournaments aren't there. There's no interest in the tournaments. That's all dropped off. But the guys I do, it's mostly tuna fishermen now, and it's bite offs.
Yeah.
It's bluefin losing their tails, out at the Regal Sword or on the bank or Jeffries. And even then, I look at it, some of them are shredded, and that tells me it's likely a big mako.
Yeah.
Versus a white shark. If it's a nice clean cut, it's a big white shark.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because their teeth are really nice for slicing, whereas makos are shredders. An interesting observation.
Yeah.
I can count on really one hand the number of white sharks encountered in all those years of tournament sampling.
Now, when you go into these beaches looking to tag them, I'm assuming people have experimented with chum. You see white sharks near the seals. Have you guys chummed like just outside of them to see, do they turn off and come check out the chum slick, or is it
purely visual?
Is it like a location thing, or is it purely a visual thing?
Well, we tried chumming a couple of times before. Now the state, again, my agency passed this regulation,
you can't do
which makes it illegal.
Right.
And, if we use the standard chum, the ground bluefish or menhaden, there was no interest there. For me to draw their attention, I would have had to use marine mammal,
Wow.
And even then, we had permits to use marine mammal. Back when we fished, we had Chris Fisher and the O-Search guys here in 2012 and 13, and we committed an entire month of August, which is peak time, to white sharks in 2013, using marine mammal scent as chum, and we only tagged 2 fish, in 1 month.
That's amazing. That's
crazy. And that started telling me that it's really live animals they're interested in. So what's the chum from a live animal, right? It's going to be, any scent coming off their bodies in terms of oils, and sweat glands and that kind of stuff. But also it's going to be, what they're producing in terms of urine and feces.
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking that maybe that's the way you draw these animals if you were to chum for them. They're tuned into those compounds that these animals are producing, those scent trails, because, they're interested in attacking and killing live animals. And when it comes to seals, and they're not big scavenger of seals. They will do it. But, I once used a whole dead seal carcass early on. And back in 2009, there was a seal carcass floating right off the beach where there were white sharks, and they didn't touch it.
Wow. Yeah, you wonder if it's like an instinctual thing. If the seal died because of a disease or something, maybe it,
It's something that animals putting off.
Evolution, right?
Scent changes as it
That's
degrades.
weird.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
but then again, they eat dead whales. So.
Yeah, that's so strange.
But they eat dead whales.
Yeah.
And I've seen them in all stages of decomposition that these sharks will go after.
Huh.
So it's interesting. But the whale carcass is different from the seal carcass. It's producing different compounds in terms of what these animals are interested in. So it's a whole area of research. It's really hard to do, but it'd be worth trying.
And it's fun to talk about.
It is.
Yeah, it's definitely fun to talk
It's
about.
exciting.
Yeah.
You want to ask your final two?
No, you can ask one of them.
All right. We've kind of talked about this in every piece of this conversation, but where do you generally see the coastal shark population in the next 20 plus years?
Yeah, with any species, and I know you'll probably ask about seals too at some point.
Yeah, that's the next one.
So if we're talking about seals, we're talking about sharks, we're talking about deer. The system itself, the ecosystem itself, has a carrying capacity that it can, where whether we're talking sharks or seals, not all can survive because there's limited resources. And then you also have disease that breaks out in high densities of animals. So we've already seen some of that in seals. There's actually been a couple of disease breakouts along the Maine coast that have taken down large numbers of seals. And as a matter of fact, I believe it's distemper, which is we see typically in dogs. But related diseases that have to deal with high densities. In fish, you don't so much see disease as you see, increases in social interactions and competition. When you have a top predator like white sharks, a white shark doesn't want a lot of white sharks near it because it wants to kill a seal and eat that seal without having to lose that seal to another white shark. And so you get social interactions. And so you get competition, and eventually you might even get territoriality where one white shark will displace others. And we're starting to see some aspects of that. So there is going to be, that's why any given day, you might not have 1,000 white sharks there because other white sharks will push them out. Mm-hmm. So you get that happening with white sharks. And what that number is, what that balance is, we'll probably be able to figure it out at some point. I don't know what it is right now. But overall, the population will continue to grow and expand into other areas, and we're seeing that in the Gulf of Maine. And as you guys talked about, Canadian waters, where more and more white sharks might just swing into Cape Cod like a Burger King and say, okay, I'll grab a Whopper. Yep. Or maybe the damn line to get a Whopper is too long, so I'm just going to keep going into the Gulf of Maine, or maybe check out Cape Cod Bay, or run the coastline up to Gloucester, and then keep going up to where there's plenty of harbor seals and gray seals in the Gulf of Maine. And so, yeah, I think it will continue to grow until it reaches carrying capacity, or to the point where, at least locally, those social interactions and the competition displaces animals.
Right.
What that number is, I don't know. With seals, we may be able to determine that number. There will be a carrying capacity to the system where, seals are actually competing with us as well. Right? Yeah. Because we're trying to harvest groundfish resources and other resources that these seals are also targeting. So we've got to calculate what the human impact is on those populations and how the seals might react to that. And I know that most recreational and commercial fishermen view the seals as being one royal pain in the ass.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people pushing the seals being an issue, especially on the bluefin side, and really stripe out everything that we do.
Right.
Everybody doesn't, quote unquote, doesn't like seals.
Right. I sympathize with those folks, absolutely. Because, and so, what do we do about them? So the next question is, what's the solution
Right.
to this? Right. So in the absence of any changes to the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which I don't foresee coming anytime soon.
Yeah.
That's a pretty tightly written act that would need to be altered at the highest levels. So legislatively at the federal level, that would allow for some kind of reduction in the seal population. And for that to happen, you'd have to calculate what that reduction would need to be. And I think a lot of fishermen would like to see it go back to where it was, perhaps back in the 80s and 90s. And when, you could go out and catch fish and didn't have to deal with this seal population. But for that kind of reduction to happen, you're talking about a cull on the order of, tens of thousands of animals. And I just don't think that is ever going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think that with the major conservation groups that are out there now and what the American public is willing to allow, I don't think that level of population reduction will ever be tolerated, from a realistic point of view.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus what you want versus what you think might happen.
Right. Could there be okay, we'll let you take 1,000 animals, will 1,000 animals make much of a difference? A lot of the seals that we have here come from other parts, and there's routine movement. It's not like they're trapped on Cape Cod. They move between Sable Island, Canada, and the Gulf of Maine quite frequently. And so you remove 500 seals here. The next year you could have 500 seals coming from other parts, filling that right in. It's kind of like deer hunting to some extent. You shoot a big buck in an area. Next year there's another big buck that's probably going to be there. Because these animals are moving and they exploit open areas where perhaps an animal's been removed, another one's going to come in and fill in. And so you're talking about a major population reduction, which I don't think is going to be possible. From my perspective, what I want to do is I want to figure out what kind of damage can the sharks do to that population? Not only the ones around Cape Cod, but up in the Gulf of Maine, because they're moving up here and into these shallow areas to feed on seals. And it's their job. If we look at predators and prey, you work your way up the food chain throughout the food web. The shark's job is to reduce the seal population to a natural level that's sustainable, from an ecological point of view. So we're really curious is, okay, how many seals will a white shark eat over the summer? And how many seals will a white shark population eat? Now, will it be enough to satisfy the interests of commercial and recreational fishermen? Probably not. But if they do their job correctly, they're going to reduce that population.
Do you have any data as far as how much a white shark eats throughout the course of a day, a week, a month?
No, we're using a variety of technologies now to try to answer that question. Yeah. And whether it be drone observations or some of our tagging technologies with cameras built into them, we have really, and you would think that with the amount of time I'm on the water, the team is on the water off Cape Cod, over the course of a summer, that we would see white sharks eating seals every day or every week. And it's remarkable how little we see them succeed. So, and then we know there's a learning curve for these animals, and we may not be out at the right time. What if it's all happening at night? But we're trying to figure that out. How many seals will a shark take? We know that certain sharks stay all summer, and they're not going to stay all summer if they're not eating. Right. So they've got to be doing well. And so the number is what is that number? So I'm hoping over the course of the next year or two, I can figure that out. But that's all part of our ongoing research.
It's awesome.
It's so awesome. This has been amazing, by the way.
Yes.
For us, and I think the listeners are going to get a lot out of this, and it's very educational. It's been incredible. And just to circle back to you, Greg, I know you have one book that you've written and another that you've collaborated on, or is it more than that?
Well, I went through this phase as a kid, going back to my childhood, because I was so obsessed with fish and sharks. I had aquariums as growing up. A lot of kids do. So I got into this phase of my life where I wrote a whole bunch of aquarium books about how to keep aquariums. And I did like 12 or 13 or 14 aquarium books.
That's awesome.
So you could probably find me at Amazon if you look up my name for aquarium books. I've done 3 editions of my book called The Shark Handbook, which the most recent edition just came out late last year. And so that's out there. And it's called The Shark Handbook, which is kind of like not just white shark centric, but it's about all the shark research I've done and other scientists have done, and how we go about doing research and all the diversity of shark species, with a whole shitload of photographs that I've taken and others have taken. And now I'm putting together another book, perhaps for next year to come out, that'll be more white shark centric. And so keep your eyes open for that.
That's exciting.
Next year. So yeah. I'm forever trying to do all kinds of cool things and share that with the public. I'm all about doing it. Even though I have to admit, I'm really lousy with social media. I don't do any. But maybe I will as time goes on, but I like to get out and interact with the public and give talks and do those kinds of things.
We always love listening to you. You're very well spoken, and it's always a pleasure. How else can people find out about your research, websites? I know social media you're not too up to date with, but you do have profile on Facebook and Instagram.
I do. Yeah, I do. I have those. I don't check them very often. Most of them say, if you go to them, if you want to reach me, email me. But I work for the Division of Marine Fisheries, as you guys know. So the state website has some information, certainly on how to contact me. But it's a typical bureaucratic website. So we tend to put out notices and regulations.
Yeah.
We're really good at regulating people. That's what we do, right? So most people don't like to go to our website unless you want to get permits and those kinds of things. But I do have some pages there. But I also encourage folks to go to the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy social media pages, because they do a great job of sharing what we do through social media and their website, in terms of videos and photos and up to date, research projects. So, as much as I'd love to point you toward the Division of Marine Fisheries, certainly check it out. But as far as staying up to date, go to the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy's Facebook, and Instagram, whatever, all those pages.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else, T?
No, this was this was a dream come true.
We've both been so excited.
Cut it out.
No, seriously, we've both been so excited for this conversation. He's been frothing over this conversation for a couple of weeks. So as have I. But again, Greg, thank you so much for doing this with us. And we're definitely going to do it again. And as you guys progress in research and data over the next few years, we'd be glad to have you on and spread the word and, give notice to our fishermen following. So
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys reaching out to me. It's been a real pleasure to talk to both you guys, Brian, Taylor. The other thing is, I can't thank the fishing public and commercial fishermen for really helping me get to where I am today. They've been instrumental in teaching me, how to learn from being on the ocean and sharing what they know with me, guys like you. So thanks so much. And I really appreciate it. And maybe in a few months, even get Megan Winton on. She's fantastic. She's a great scientist, and she'll call herself a nerd, but she is really outgoing and excellent at sharing what she does. And then one of my other ex-students, Jeff Kneebone, who's really, really active in tuna research still and shark research. Jeff's at the New England Aquarium. Megan's at the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. They're both, and both love to fish. They're fishing scientists.
Awesome.
And so keep those two names in mind as people to go to in the future.
We will. We'll set up a conversation with both of them.
Excellent.
That'd be great. And we're just gonna end this on old Greg's 3 words of wisdom. Our father, old Greg. Just remember, you can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last one, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight, everybody. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you.
No problem.
We'll talk to you
Thanks,
later.
guys.
All right,
Thank you.
See you
Take
later.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. If you would like more information about today's guest, our episode, and show sponsors, or if you want to order hats and apparel, please visit our website at SeaBrosFishing.com. You can also stay up to date on all the latest SeaBros Fishing content and podcast episodes by following us on Instagram at SeaBros Fishing. Finally, to book a trip with us through our family-run charter fishing company, please visit massbayguides.com or see our latest updates and fishing reports by following Mass Bay Guides on Instagram and Facebook.